Russia is losing across multiple fronts, all at the same time. On the battlefield, Ukraine is raising its flag over liberated villages. In the skies, Ukrainian drones are crippling Russia's refineries, destroying its command post, and even destroying its satellite control systems. But there's something else in the skies, and that is Flamingo. Flamingo has truly shocked the Russians. They cannot believe that Ukraine now has its very own cruise missile, and it is being used effectively. And there's something else that is shocking the Russians, and that is the fact that there are armed partisans from Atesh blowing up Russian rail lines across Russia. They blew up another one near Debaltseve that was able to choke off supplies. For Russia, things are looking bad. But you know what? They're about to get even worse. My name is Jason Smart. I'm a special correspondent for the Kyiv Post. And in addition to that, I happen to be a national security advisor who has spent the past 20 years studying Russia and the Putin regime, which were in fact the topics for my master's and doctoral dissertations. So when we look at what's going on, it is actually fascinating. Here in Kyiv, Ukraine, where I am, the people are very optimistic. I can tell you, the past couple of weeks have put a lot of smiles on a lot of people's faces. The rise of Flamingo has been incredible. As you know, Flamingo was used recently to attack an FSB border guard point located inside of Crimea. And what's interesting about that attack was that the Russian press tried to hide it. And they tried to act like nothing happened. But the Ukrainian press, they were very happy. They were very excited. And they made a very big deal about it. Because this is a game changer. Ukraine now has its own ability to attack within Russia, up to 3,000 kilometers. That is a huge distance. And with this, Ukraine will be able to put the Russians on a back footing. It'll be harder and harder for the Russians to keep the occupied territories and even to defend its own territory. But what we will probably see more of very soon are more attacks on Russia's ability, its capacity to refine oil. This has already destroyed the Russian economy. Currently, there is a lack of gasoline across Russia. There's a lack of diesel across Russia. And specifically in the areas in the central part of Russia and the eastern part of Russia, there's simply no gasoline in different parts. That's amazing. So if Ukraine keeps this up, we can expect it will have massive economic impact on Russia. But let's look at what's going on right now inside the occupied territories, because this is also really great news. So we see that there are more and more gains by the Ukrainian troops. Ukrainian troops were able to liberate Novoekonomichny, which is located in Donetsk Oblast. They raised the flag there after 2 very intense weeks of fighting. Near Kupiansk, Ukraine forces were able to liberate Mirny. And why that's so important is that it secures control of a key road that was long used by the Russians to pressure the city. We also saw something else, though, and this is definitely worth noticing. Do you remember the town of Dachny? It's the one located in Dnipropetrovsk. The Russians had claimed that now they'd cut into this new oblast of Ukraine, Dnipropetrovsk, and that now it was them who was expanding. Now is one more oblast they were about to take. Well, we see that's no longer the case. Dachny is in the hands of the Ukrainians. What this was, and we should always be clear about this, is that Dachny was not an occupation. It was a propaganda show. The Russians showed up and claimed that they were taking over new things. The reality is they didn't have the capacity to do so. And yet, when you read the press, they always pick it up when the Russians make some sort of a gain, even if it's for a couple hours. Do you remember just a couple weeks ago when the Russians claimed to have had major breakthroughs on the Ukrainian line? Then it turned out, within a few days, it was all over. The Russians did this just for propaganda, and the press always picks it up. So that's why I created this channel, to get out the truth of what's really happening here in Ukraine and what's really happening inside of Russia. So if you want to help me get the truth about Ukraine and about our neighbor, Russia, please do me a favor. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and consider becoming a channel member today. So let's take a look at what else is happening. What else is happening that is such a reason for joy? We look at what's happening, for instance, the Seversk sector. The 81st Air Mobile Brigade, it was able to repel a large Russian assault. They were able to destroy 4 APCs, and they killed about 2.5 dozen Russian invaders. In Volchansk, we saw there was also more successes. The border guard forepost, those units shot down more Russian drones. And Russian drones are getting shot down a lot more frequently than ever before. And I've asked people why that is. What is going on? And at least part of that reason is simply because Ukraine's drones, they're produced with love. There are lots of people who work on them, people who spend day and night trying to develop better technologies. They're doing it because they want Ukraine to win. In Russia, it's a government bureaucracy. And so they don't have the same ability to produce the same technologies. So let's take a look at what else is going on. We saw how the 47th Mechanized Brigade, it was able to successfully destroy a Russian drone command post. That attack was a very big deal. The 47th, you'll recall, specifically as a unit, was built to NATO standards back in 2022, and they continue to do great work. We've seen the ongoing use of FPV drones to destroy Russian anti-tank mine depots and other things across the front. And that's in addition to what we see the planes doing. Look at the MiG-29s. They were able to destroy groups of enemy invaders as well as to destroy more radar and more navigation used by the Russians. But perhaps even more impressive or more exciting was the attacks going on within Crimea. We see these attacks are becoming more and more regular. Ukraine was able to successfully attack the 40th Command and Measurement Complex that's located near Yevpatoria. It destroyed the RT-70, the Goliath. Now, why that matters so much is that it is the core of a 70-meter deep space dish. Its entire purpose, though, is to support the GLONASS satellites. GLONASS is Russia's version of GPS. So without that, it means that the Russians are further behind. But the Russians are facing losses everywhere. Ukraine is carrying out amazing attacks across Russia and across the occupied territories. But there's someone else also helping with that, and that is Atesh. As we've discussed, Atesh is a rebel group. It is a group of people seeking to violently overthrow the Putin regime. And it's sort of amazing to imagine that within Russia, a country where we virtually never see protest, there are people trying to violently overthrow the government. But Ukraine is carrying out attacks, and within Russia, there are Russians carrying out attacks. All of this is putting more and more pressure on the Kremlin. And the Kremlin is probably worried at this point. At least the people of Russia are worried, because when you read the telegram, you see that they're worried. You see that they realize that something's not going right. Somehow little Ukraine, who after 1,280 days is still not occupied, there's something not going right. What is going wrong? And they can't put their finger on it, but they know it's something. And part of that something is the fact that they have so many internal problems they cannot wage war. Their internal problems are only made worse, though, by the corruption of their military leadership. So many decades of corruption have left them totally inept, totally incapable of waging war. And that's why Ukraine today is cutting through them so well, so effectively, so efficiently. And the Russians are facing such incredibly high rates of casualty. It's simply incredible. And what's more incredible is the fact that it's not getting better. The Russians are making more and more mistakes. They are driving themselves further and further into the ground. And at present, there's absolutely no reason to think that it'll improve. There is not one general in Moscow who has any idea of how to turn this around. If there was, he would already be doing that. But they aren't, because they don't have any idea of how to turn this all around. It is that simple. So Russia at this point is burning supplies, it's burning through men, but it's ultimately not getting any closer to achieving its goals. Russia's in a difficult situation. And very fortunately, it looks like it's going to get far, far worse. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and leave your comments below. I'm very interested to know what you think. What do you think of all these big successes by Ukraine? And now, with the advent of Flamingo, what should we expect to see? As always, thank you for supporting Ukraine.